Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to Weekly Wildlife Wisdom. And so far, I've been your host, Zero Yeti, and happy Fossil Day. And this week, we're going to be covering 7 awesome creatures which I personally happen to have in my fossil collection, starting with Brontosaurus, which is a genus of herbivorous sauropod dinosaur that lived in North America during the late Jurassic period, some 156 to 146 million years ago. The first remains attributed to Brontosaurus, consisting of a fairly complete skeleton, was collected from the rocks at Como Bluff, Wyoming by William Harlow Reed, who identified it as belonging to an entirely new genus and species which he named Brontosaurus excelsus, meaning thunder lizard, from the Greek bronte, meaning thunder, and sauros, meaning lizard, and from the Latin excelsus, meaning noble or high. He then brought the specimen to Orthoceras Charles Marsh, who formally described and announced the specimen in 1879. By this time, the bone wars were in full swing, and because of this, publications and inscriptions of many taxa collected by Marsh, Cope, and their allies were rushed, and at the time, this unfortunately included Brontosaurus. Despite being one of the most complete sauropod skeletons known at the time, the Brontosaurus type specimen, along with another found in 1880, both lacked skulls. In 1903, Elmore S. Riggs argued that Brontosaurus was so similar to Apatosaurus that it should become a synonym. However, when the first skeleton of Apatosaurus was mounted at the American Museum of Natural History in 1905, it bore the name Brontosaurus. In additional confusion, because no skulls were known from these animals, a facsimile was constructed based off other sauropod skulls, which are now known to be Camarasaurus and Brachiosaurus. This gave the mount a truly bizarre head. This one-mounted skeleton is the reason why so much controversy would exist around this dinosaur for over the next 100 years. As far as science was concerned, Brontosaurus did not exist except as a synonym to Apatosaurus. But the wider public only really heard about Brontosaurus. After all, that was the name on the display. And from that point on, Brontosaurus would get star billing in almost every popular science book, TV show, and movie. It was not until 1975, a study by John Stanton McIntosh and David Berman redescribing the skull and jaws of Apatosaurus and Diplodocus was published, that things would really get moving for a more accurate reconstruction. Specifically, many skulls of Apatosaurus have been known for a long time, but had just been mistakenly added to the Diplodocus genus on the basis of superficial similarity. McIntosh and Berman also noted that Holland was correct in his interpretation that the Brontosaurus mount had the wrong skull form. In October 1979, the first true Apatosaurus skull was mounted on the Apatosaurus skeleton. In 1995, the original Brontosaurus mount from the 1905 American Museum of Natural History finally got a skull revision to be like that of Apatosaurus, and was now named as Apatosaurus excelsus. It took the best part of a century to reveal the true shape and form of Apatosaurus, and for most of this time the majority of paleontologists would agree with the opinion of Elmer S. Riggs, which was that Brontosaurus would be a synonym to Apatosaurus. One notable exception, however, was Robert T. Backer, who in 1998 argued that Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus were distinct. Backer would be proven right in 2015 when an extremely in-depth sauropod study conducted by Emmanuel Straup, Octavio Mates, and Roger Benson found that Brontosaurus was in fact a valid genus, and that the genre Eleosaurus and Brontosaurus were actually synonyms with Brontosaurus. Reach around 62 to 72 feet, or 19 to 22 meters in length, and 30,000 to 38,000 pounds, or 13,600 to 17,250 kilograms in weight, Brontosaurus was a large, long-necked quadrupedal animal with a long tail terminating in a whip-like structure. The cervical vertebrae were noticeably extremely robust and heavily built, in contrast to its lightly built relatives Diplodocus and Barosaurus. The forelimbs were short and stout, whereas the hind were elongated and thick, all signs that Brontosaurus was a remarkably strong and muscular creature. Brontosaurus would have likely lived in loose herds, acting as a non-selective browser, and fed upon ferns, cycads, ginkgos, and horsetails, as it coexisted with a menagerie of other Morrison taxa, such as Diplodocus, Barosaurus, Brachiosaurus, Stegosaurus, Dryosaurus, Camarasaurus, Camptosaurus, Allosaurus, Torosaurus, and Ceratosaurus. Next up is Tapir veroensis, more commonly known as the Vero tapir or the woolly tapir. It is an extinct genus of tapir species lived throughout the eastern and southern part of North America during the Pleistocene epoch some 2 million to 11,000 years ago. Although isolated teeth and other fragmentary fossils now attributed to the Vero tapir have been found since 1852, the holotype specimen, consisting of a complete skull with full dentition, was unearthed in 1915 at Vero Beach, Florida, and would be formally named and described in 1918 by geologist E.H. Sellards. Since then, several more near-complete specimens have been found as far west as Texas, as south as Mexico, and as north as New York. Reaching around 5 to 8 feet, or 1.5 to 2.5 meters in length, and 400 to 700 pounds, or 180 to 320 kilograms in weight, the Vero tapir was comparable in size to today's Bard's tapir, or the South American tapir. The sagittal crest was low in comparison to some other tapir species, and the Vero tapir has been estimated to have had a relatively high bite force, which would have allowed it to feed upon a variety of plant material, including leaves, grasses, stems, tubers, branches, flowers, ferns, nuts, seeds, and fruit. In life, it likely sported a dense furry coat. As such, Tapir veroensis is thought to have had been more tolerant of cold environments and would have inhabited the forests, swamps, wetlands, and mountainous regions of eastern North America. Next up is Postosuchus, which is an extinct genus of large rauisuchid reptile, which lived in what is now North America during the late Triassic, some 230 to 208 million years ago. Postosuchus is a member of the clade Pseudotsuchia, a lineage of archosaurs which includes the modern crocodilians. During an expedition in 1980, paleontologists of the Texas Tech University discovered a new geological site rich in Triassic fossils near Post Garza County, Texas, in what is known as the Cooper Canyon Formation. Over the following years, the remains of over a dozen animals were unearthed, including the holotype specimen of Postosuchus, consisting of a well-preserved skull and a partial postcranial skeleton, along with another complete skeleton and an additional skull, which were all named and described by paleontologist Senkar Chatterjee in 1985. The genus name Postosuchus means the crocodile of the post. The species name refers to Mr. and Mrs. Jack Kirkpatrick, who helped excavate the animal's remains. Additional remains of Postosuchus have been recovered from Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and North Carolina. Today, two species, being Kirkpatricki and P. allisoniae, are recognized. Reach around 16 to 23 feet, or 5 to 7 meters in length, and around 3.5 to 5 feet, or 1 to 1.5 meters tall at the hips, and around 550 to 1,000 pounds, or 250 to 455 kilograms in weight. Postosuchus was one of the largest terrestrial carnivores of the Triassic. It had a massively built skull bearing dagger-like teeth. The neck was elongated, expanding to a short torso and extraordinarily long tail. The neck, body, and tail were covered in a layer of dermal armor known as osteoderms, and the hind legs were long and strongly built, while the forelimbs were a fair bit skinnier and shorter. This has caused there to be a fair bit of debate as to whether Postosuchus was a quadruped or a biped. As of 2022, it is believed Postosuchus would have been a facultative biped, which likely would have ran and traveled long distances on two legs, but also walked about on four legs when moving at slower speeds or traveling shorter distances. In life, Postosuchus would have acted as an apex predator of its environment and would have fed upon equally bizarre creatures it shared its home with, such as dicynodonts, Phinosaurus, labyrinthodonts, freshwater sharks, lungfish, and other terrestrial archosauromorphs, like Trilobophosaurus, Typothorax, Desmatosuchus, and the early dinosaur Coelophysis. Next up is Orthoceratidae, which is a now extinct family of nautiloid mollusks which lived throughout what is now North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa, as well as Australia, from the Ordovician through to the Triassic, around 490 to 203.7 million years ago, existing for approximately 286.4 million years. The family is named after the distinct genus Orthoceras, which lived during the Ordovician in what is now the Baltic states and Sweden, which was formally described in 1789. Originally, Orthoceras referred to all nautiloids with a straight shell, called an orthocone. and thus was formerly thought to have had a worldwide distribution due to the genus's use as a wastebasket taxon for numerous species of conical-shelled nautiloids throughout the Paleozoic and Triassic. Since then, work has been carried out at recataloguing the genus to O. regulaire, and then recharacterizing the plethora of remaining species under the family of Orthoceratidae, which was established in 1844. This now includes the genre of Orthoceras, Bationoceras, Chevioceras, Copiceras, Cetinoceras, Infundibulioceras, Coeonoceras, Copenioceras, Merocycloceras, Mechelionoceras, Ogeogoceras, Orthocycloceras, Oxfordoceras, Plathoroceras, Plagiostomoceras, Pleuthurosauroceras, Pogetoceras, Polygrammoceras, Pseudocyphoceras, Stratiocycloceras, Theoceras, Tibiconoceras, and Trematoceras. As such, all members are characterized by long, slender, and usually straight, but sometimes slightly curved shells, with a central or subcentral orthosynodic spicule that is free of deposits, and a long body chamber and cylindrical or slightly inflated connecting rings. Ornamentation may be in the form of longitudinal or transverse ribs, or lily-ray, and the shell may be smooth on the surface. Next up is Tapejara, which is a now extinct genus of pterosaur, which lived throughout what is now South America during the Aptian and Albian stages of the early Cretaceous period, some 115 to 108 million years ago. First remains Tapejara, consisting of several well-preserved specimens, which were recovered from the Santana Formation of the Aripe Basin of northeastern Brazil by paleontologist Alexander Kellner and Diogenes de Almeida Campos in 1989. Unfortunately, the phylogenetic classification of Tapejara has been quite turbulent, with a total of 3 species once being attributed to the genus. The type species, and the only current one recognized as valid by most researchers, is T. Wellnhoferi, with the specific name honoring German paleontologist Peter Wellnhofer. 2 large species, originally named Tapejara imperator and Tapejara navigans, were later shown to be significantly different from T. Wellnhofer, and therefore were reclassified into new genre. The species T. imperator was given its own genus, Tupandactylus, by Kellner and Campos, while Unwine and Mattel found that T. imperator and T. navigans belonged to the same genus, which they named Ingrandia imperator and Ingrandia navigans, respectively. This genus name honored Wellnhofer's late wife Ingrid. Because Tupandactylus was named first, it retained priority over the name Ingrandia, and thus was sunk into the genus Tupandactylus in 2011. Reach around 2 to 3.3 feet or 0.6 to 1 meter tall, and around 3 to 6 pounds or 1.36 to 2.72 kilograms in weight, with a 4 to 5 foot or 1.2 to 1.52 wingspan. Tapejara had some elaborate head ornamentation, consisting of a semicircular crest above the snout and a bony prong which extended back behind the head. In life, Tapejara would have been a cathermeral omnivore, which likely would have fed upon fruits, nuts, leaves, arthropods, mollusks, and small vertebrates. Trionyx sylvestris, also known as the European softshell turtle, is an extinct genus of softshell turtle in the genus Trionyx. Extinct species of softshell turtle in the genus Trionyx, and a close relative of the modern Nile softshell turtle. This species, and others like it, inhabited what is now Europe during the Eocene epoch, some 56 to 41 million years ago. The first remains of Trionyx sylvestris, consisting of an almost complete skull, was recovered in 1969 from the Abbey Wood shell bed by John James and William George, 2 men with 2 first names apiece. They first presented this find to the British Natural History Museum, where it would be formally described and named by Doctors Walkner and Moody in 1974. Since then, several more fragmentary and fairly complete specimens have been recovered from France and the British Isles, reaching around 2.5 to 4 feet or 0.76 to 1.21 meters in shell length and around 80 to 100 pounds or 35 to 45 kilograms in weight. Tyrannosaurus sylvestris would have inhabited lakes, rivers, deltas, wetlands, and brackish lagoons, where it would have fed upon crustaceans, mollusks, worms, seeds, fish, fruit, leaves, and aquatic plants. And our last creature of this week is Lambeosaurus, which is an extinct genus of hadrosaurid dinosaur that lived throughout what is now North America during the late Cretaceous period, some 83 to 72 million years ago. Lambeosaurus has a complicated taxonomic history, beginning in 1902 with Lawrence Lambe's naming of hadrosaurid limb material and other bones from Alberta as Trachodon marginatus. In this same publication, he named the upper jaw of a dinosaur from the Dinosaur Park Formation as Trachodon altidens. In the same volume, Henry Fairfield Osborn suggests that T. altidens could belong to a new genus, which he named Diodon, or Didonodon. Throughout the 1910s, paleontologists found numerous additional hadrosaur remains from the Dinosaur Park Formation, which would be variously assigned to T. marginatus or a genus called Stephanosaurus. Unfortunately, there was very little to associate these new remains with the scrappy earlier marginatus material. So in 1923, William Parkes proposed a new genus and species with both generic and specific names honoring Lambe, who had died 4 years earlier. Lambeosaurus lambe would additionally be made the type genus of the new subfamily Lambeosaurinne. Over the next century, additional remains would be recovered, and the genre Proschiniosaurus, Tetragonisaurus, and Hadrosaurus passidens would be found to be Lambeosaurus. Today, two species are definitely confirmed, being Lambeosaurus lambe and Lambeosaurus magenicrestatus, and a third possible species in Lambeosaurus clavinatalius. Reaching around 23 to 26 feet or 7 to 8 meters in length and around 2.8 to 3.6 short tons or 2.5 to 3.3 metric tons in weight. Lambeosaurus is a rather large ornithopod dinosaur, which, like other hadrosaurs, can move on both two legs and on all fours. By being able to switch between quadrupedal and bipedal locomotion, Lambeosaurus could have browsed upon both low-growing and moderately high-growing vegetation, as well as traveling considerable distances at fairly efficiently. Its most distinctive feature, the crest, varied between species, as Lambeosaurus lambe had a hatchet-like shaped crest, with a hatchet blade projecting in front of the eyes, and a handle, which was a solid bony rod, jutted out over the back of the skull. While in Lambeosaurus magicrestatus, the handle was greatly reduced and the blade expanded, forming a tall, exaggerated pompadour-like crest. As always, take care to my guys, gals, non-binary pals. Have a wonderful day.